Leader of Fianna Fáil, Deputy Martin.
Taoiseach, yesterday's vote in the House of Commons is serious, grave, and creates real uncertainty and indeed anxiety. No clear or coherent view has yet emerged from the British political system in terms of the type of Brexit that would command a majority of British parliamentarians. And in our context, we know that a no-deal Brexit would be very damaging to the Irish economy, indeed to the UK economy, and indeed to Europe as well. And that is why we must double down on our efforts to be ready and to prepare comprehensively for a no-deal Brexit. In Ireland, our decision from the Fianna Fáil party to continue with the confidence and supply has spared us the mayhem and instability and uncertainty that's evident in the British system, and that would flow if a general election had been precipitated here. But, Taoiseach, when it comes to Brexit, the government must be honest with the Oireachtas and with the people. It needs to be honest in relation to the potential impact of a no-deal Brexit on our politics, economic potential and social well-being. The government needs to be honest in terms of all of the preparations currently underway concerning a no-deal Brexit. It should share all of its analysis in terms of pensions and social protection, for example, and publish that analysis. It should publish its analysis on the implications of a no-deal Brexit in terms of our budgetary projections on revenue and indeed on expenditure. But yesterday's exchange, Taoiseach, between the Taoiseach and the Minister for Transport are deeply worrying in that respect, because it suggests that the public are not being told the full truth for party political reasons. I get the same sense at times in terms of the government not revealing the full details of its plans for a no-deal Brexit. Minister Ross, as you know, replying to a question concerning a truck travelling from Scotland by boat to Larne could proceed to the Republic, and would there be checks? And he said, and I quote, "I would anticipate that there would be checks," unquote. The Taoiseach said in reply, quote, "Yes, but we can't get into where they'll be at this stage. They could be in the sea. They could be ... But once you start talking about checks anywhere near the border, people will start delving into that. And all of a sudden, we'll be the government that reintroduced a physical border on the island of Ireland." And to which Shane Ross replied, "Yeah, but I didn't know what to say." Clearly, he didn't do his homework. So, Taoiseach, it seems that there's a private understanding and knowledge. Now, this obviously was a conversation that was never meant to be public. The microphones were still on. But it seems there's a private understanding and knowledge within government about a border in the aftermath of a no-deal Brexit, but that at all costs that private understanding must not be shared with the public. Isn't that a fair conclusion to be drawn from the exchange between the two ministers? It's like the episode from Fawlty Towers. Whatever you do, don't mention the war. But somebody forgot to tell Minister Ross. So, Taoiseach, who is telling the truth here? Were ministers told not to mention the possibility of some checks being done or in place in the event of a no-deal Brexit? And is it the government's position that border checks could be at sea, and how realistic is such a proposition anyway?
Taoiseach.
Thanks very much, Deputy. First of all, I want to say that as government we very much regret the vote that occurred last night in Westminster to reject the withdrawal agreement and the associated joint political declaration. A no-deal exit is something that would be very bad for Ireland, for the United Kingdom and for all of the European Union. A no-deal scenario would leave us with no guarantee in relation to there not being a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. It would leave us with no protections around citizens' rights and freedoms, and of course it would have a major impact on jobs and the economy, particularly the traded sector, SMEs and the agri-food industry. So we must do all that we can in the coming weeks to avoid a no-deal exit of the UK from the European Union, but not in a way that compromises our fundamental positions. This is a problem that began in Westminster with the referendum on Brexit. We found a solution, the withdrawal agreement negotiated over months and months, agreed by 28 governments, and now Westminster has rejected that solution. So the problem lies in Westminster. And I welcome the fact that the Prime Minister has said that she is now going to engage with senior politicians from all parties to see if they can come together with a way forward with a Brexit that commands a majority in the House of Commons. But whatever they come up with must be acceptable to us in Ireland and the European Union as a whole. In terms of the budget impacts which you mentioned, the budget is planned, was planned and written with Brexit in mind. That's why we've provided for a budget surplus. That's why we've provided for a rainy day fund. It's also why we've provided for a 25% increase in capital spending, 1.5 billion extra being invested in infrastructure in Ireland to give the economy a bit of a boost at a time when there's a risk, obviously, of a significant slowdown. In terms of plans for checks, we are obviously now implementing the no-deal plans. It's no longer contingency planning. We're implementing our no-deal plans, and that provides for checks at ports and airports in Dublin and Rosslare. We're not planning for checks along the land border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, nor are we planning for checks in the sea. I can't imagine how you would carry out checks in the middle of the sea, quite frankly. I think they can only be done at ports and airports. Everything that Taoiseach has said is very consistent with our position that we stand by the backstop and we stand by the withdrawal agreement. And I think his only concern, and it's genuine concern that I have in answering questions on this issue, is that if you use the wrong words or you say things in the wrong way, people will misinterpret that as though you have some sort of secret plan to impose a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And we have no such secret plan.
What the Taoiseach has said is that the border checks could be at sea. I didn't say that, nobody else in this House said that, but the Taoiseach said it to Minister Ross, albeit he thought he was saying it privately and that it wasn't caught on microphone. Now you're saying clearly that it couldn't be at sea. And the Taoiseach went on to say that once you start talking about checks anywhere near the border, people will start delving into that, and all of a sudden we'll be the government that reintroduced a physical border on the island of Ireland. So the emphasis has been, we'll be the government. So whatever you do, don't mention the border, he is saying to Minister Ross. Don't mention it. For God's sake, don't mention the border, because we'll get tired with it. And that's the last thing we want. Has that conversation happened with the European Union? Has the government shared that view with the President of the Commission and with Michel Barnier? And you might answer that question, Taoiseach. I mean, what is your take on the exchange between Minister Ross and the Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach's reply to Minister Ross? And it's the Parliamentary Office, the Independent Budgetary Parliamentary Office, Taoiseach, that said the government had in the aftermath of the budget, made the comment that there's no projections in terms of revenue and expenditure.
Taoiseach.
I'm not sure exactly what you're driving at here, Deputy. What the Taoiseach was referring to was checks on goods moving from the UK to Ireland. That is what the backstop provides for. Backstop and the withdrawal agreement provides for checks on the movement of goods between Britain and Ireland at the ports at Dublin Airport, Rosslare, and also at the ports in Northern Ireland. That's what the withdrawal agreement provides for. That's what the backstop provides for, which is checks on goods on trade between Britain and Ireland. In relation to the budget, I mentioned already how the budget was planned with Brexit in mind. All of the economic analyses that we have so far from Copenhagen, from the ESRI, for example, indicate that there would be a slowdown in economic growth, but not that we would enter recession. Some people feel that is a little optimistic, but that is the projections that we have from ESRI, Copenhagen Economics and others, that in the event of a hard deal, no-deal Brexit, that the economy would slow down, not that the economy would go into reverse. And that's why we built those buffers into the budget, a surplus, a rainy day fund.